Hello, my name's Matt Denton. This is Mantis Hacks. In this video, I'll be taking a look at a new 3D printer. It's the Lotmax Shark SC-10, and hopefully it's going to help me build more giant Lego. Yeah, there it is, the Lotmax Shark SC-10. Great, well, I'm just going to dive straight in and get it out of the box and see what's inside. Well, it looks very nicely packaged. I've got a reel here of yellow. Probably looks about, I don't know, 200 grams or so. And there's some green here as well. Here you go. I've got a toolbox kit. Shark SC-10 comes with options. It looks like they've sent me the options kit, because what I've got here is a laser engraving kit. I'm quite excited about that. I've got the bi-colour printing kit, auto leveling kit as well, look at that. A remote interface, that's kind of funky. Lovely birch pine wood there. I'm presuming that is to test the laser engraving kit out on. There's the main gantry. The cables go underneath. I think the hardest part about this is figuring out how to get it out of the box. Oh, that's not good. I just broke a micro switch. My bad. Oh no, I can fix that. I just knocked a little lever off one of the micro switches trying to unbox it here. But that's my fault for being clumsy. Well, it was a little tricky getting it out, but it was very nicely packaged. I was just being a bit clumsy and knocked that micro switch off there. But it is mostly assembled, which is pretty cool. The only thing I did find in the bottom of the package was one rogue screw, so I'll be looking for where that came from. Now, it has got a magnetic bed, and it's very firm magnetic bed. That's really nice. It's a good surface on it. The manual is actually really nicely written and very easily laid out. Assembly, filament loading, troubleshooting, laser engraving. Okay, toolkit. A couple of spare nozzles there by the looks of things. Little nut driver wrench thing. A spare micro switch. Interesting. Some bolts to fix the gantry on, I'm guessing. A screwdriver, an assortment of Allen keys, another little screwdriver and a spanner. That'll be for clearing filament out of your nozzle, I would imagine. UK plug, laser engraving goggles, safety first. A filament stand, part separation knife, snips, that's useful. There's a little USB drive with an SD card in it. I'll probably need the auto leveling kit, which I'm assuming is an add-on. That's a cute little thing there. The laser engraving kit, that's quite exciting, but I think I'll leave that until later. The bi-colour kit, which I'm assuming is some kind of a dual extruder. Yep, that's quite nice. So let's just start with the assembly. Doesn't look like it's going to take long because I only have to attach the gantry to the base. That's the main printer assembled, and it was really easy. That's like less than 10 minutes. Literally the only bit it didn't tell me to do was insert the filament guide here into the back of the extruder output, which I've done, and I've spotted where my screw has come from. There's two screws that are holding the Z lead screw in place up here, and they'd work their way loose. This carriage is actually loose here, and that's because the screws have come out. So worth just going around and checking everything is tight Obviously it's had a fairly bumpy trip in transit and these two have just come loose. So that's the Z carriage fixed. Moves nice and smoothly and there's no play in the Z carriage. Now there is a bit of play in this X carriage. Yeah, you can probably see that. Bit of movement. Now, gravity probably would take care of that because it's always want to go to sit down at its lowest point. But I'd rather get that slightly better, so I might have a little tweak of that. Let's have a look. Okay, just had a little tweak of that X carriage and I've got rid of pretty much all of the play, but it's still moving nice and freely. So worth just checking things like that. Look around for any loose screws or fittings, just go around and check everything and then just check that the carriages are nice and secure. After all, it has had a long journey. I've decided to do a manual bed level first before I fit my auto bed leveler, and that's just because I'm working my way through the manual and it seems like a good thing to do. It's always good to have a roughly level bed anyway in the first place, especially as some of these bed leveling screws were loose, so it's probably miles out at the moment. Let's home all the axes. Let's hope my fix on that Z microswitch has worked. Yep. Okay, so it's a 5-point leveling process. Now I can see on my bed leveling that the head is way too far away from the bed at the moment and the adjusters aren't going to give me enough adjustment. So I think that the Z switch has been put in the wrong place. And I can see there is a little screw behind the connector that will allow me to bring it down the carriage slightly to drop the whole head down a bit. So that's what I'm going to do. Right, that is looking more like it. I think that might be adjustable from there. Next step is to load some filament. The printer uses 1.75mm filament, preheat PLA. So let's just bring the Z up. Looks like it's got a filament sensor here. So we go through the filament sensor. There's a little clamp on the back, so just hold that spring open and continue to feed it down. There we go. We have filament coming through. Well, let's try a printout. So I'm guessing there's a file that I can print on the SD card. Yep, that's the SD card loaded. Print, lucky cat, dog, crocodile. Let's go with a lucky cat. About 22% through this print and it's whipping along. Of course, I'm pretty impatient because I need to move on and test other features, so I've ramped the speed up to 250% and it seems to be coping fine. I'm not actually sure how fast it can go because I still haven't looked up the specs yet, but it's quite impressive. I mean, it's still relatively quiet even though it's moving along at quite a blistering pace. The extruder is coping fine, there's no slippage. The noisiest thing actually is the fan, as usual with these printers. Okay, let's stop the print here. Adhesion to the bed was really good. Yeah, it's lovely. It's been extruding nicely. It's looking really nice. I shall, of course, do a complete print later on of something. So I've turned the printer off to install the auto leveling module that goes on the side here. Now it comes with this cable. Install circuit. There's not much in the way of instructions on what to do. It just says install circuit and shows you a picture of where the cable plugs in. Okay, that's the module installed. The next thing I have to do is actually go into a configuration and enable the auto leveling. Yeah, there's not a terrible amount of information on that. So presumably I have to take the TF card out. And there's a firmware file on it maybe? Better get the laptop. On the TF card there is a directory with all the firmware in it and the folders that are required. There's also a readme in there to tell you how to upgrade the firmware. You need to copy those files to the root directory of the SD card. You also need to copy the configuration you want, either auto leveling or manual leveling, and there are 2 configuration files in 2 subfolders also in the firmware directory. So now let's try that auto leveling feature. What's going to happen? Here we go. Well, that's neat, look at that. So at the start G-code in the printer settings, add a letter L behind the G28. You do have to put G28L in order to get the leveling to happen at the beginning of any print. I guess I could do another print, or I could try the laser module, because that's what I'm kind of excited about. The laser head, which I'm assuming is a blue laser, they usually are, and this little module here, which I'm guessing attaches to the front of the printer. So install the laser back onto there using those same 2 screws that was holding the leveling module in place. Now there are plenty of warnings in the book about using the laser module, namely that the smoke and fumes that it can give off are pretty nasty depending on what material you're using, and of course you must wear safety glasses, so make sure you read the manual. And that goes into the front. So the laser engraving area is 235mm in depth and 175mm in width. So after it's installed, apparently it's converted to laser mode. Let's find out. Current mode laser carve. So yes, it has converted the interface to laser mode. Funky. So I need to put one of my little boards on here. Get my glasses on. Enable the laser, so I can see it's well out of focus at the moment. So I'm going to come down. Right, it's burning there. And then refocus from here. So this is where you want to watch your fingers. Getting the laser to focus wasn't that easy. It's quite hard to see, obviously, when you've got these glasses on. That's the point of them. But I found it easier using a white piece of paper to see when the dot was at its smallest. I think when you power on the laser, it only comes on at a very low power. I would hope so anyway, just for the purpose of focusing. So it wasn't really touching this paper. But I think it's set up right correctly. Now, I'm not entirely sure. Now, the version that came on the SD card was version 4.2.6 of the LotMax software, and it didn't have the SC-10 Shark listed as a laser module within the laser engraving program. I've just downloaded version 4.2.9 from their website, and sure enough, the SC-10 Shark has now appeared. So let's have a go at something. There are various settings in there, yeah, none of which are terribly well explained, but let's just try it. So I've exported the file to the SD card and see if anything happens. Going to go somewhere over to this corner maybe? Oh no, here we go, it's in the middle. Well, it's drawn a black line. It's not come out great, but it was a first attempt. It's drawn the mantis bit, but the hex is missing completely. I can't really find out much information on this laser engraving software, so quite hard to figure out what's going on. I'm sure the resolution could be improved, because I think that's why the hex is missing. It's to do with how it's rasterized the image. I'm going to try another one just for fun, and I've done some text as well, so let's have a look. Well, actually, I think that came out exactly the same. I think that software needs some serious documentation. I've spent a little bit more time looking at the laser module on the Shark SC-10 and using a different piece of software called Laser GRBL. I have got some better results. It's still not perfect, and I have had to edit the G code after the Laser GRBL has processed the file, but it is better and it does show some promise. And doing an outline, this does give me an idea for etching labels onto project boxes, which I'm going to try if I can find some vinyl tape. So there's the output. That's actually not too bad. So of course you can go over it, you can do multiple passes to thicken the line or go deeper into the material, but you can also defocus the laser using this method by bringing the laser head higher up of the bed. So now it's producing a thicker line. So you have it, a slightly thicker version. So what I want to try now is a filled version. Obviously that's not quite what I was expecting, it's inverted it, but it's pretty good. That shows some promise actually. This is an aluminium case which I've just put some PVC vinyl tape on the back of, and I'm going to offset the head by 30mm depth, which is the depth of the case, so raise the head up by 30mm, and then see if it will etch out of this vinyl and then peel the vinyl back off again. Just remember that the fumes from cutting plastics like this are pretty bad, so make sure it's ventilated. I think it's doing what I wanted it to do. I mean, I need to pick out the little bits in the middle. I need something a bit smaller to get the middle of that A out, but that's not bad. I've taken the laser off and switched back to my auto leveling probe, and I've also created a profile in Simplify 3D using the settings from Cura, and I've got my little fertility idol at 1/4 scale to do a test print. I did find some specifications, so it's a 235mm square bed by 265mm tall. It's a 0.4mm nozzle. Now I also looked at some of the Cura profiles, and it was ranging from 0.12mm layer height up to about 0.28mm. The mid-level, which was 0.2mm, had several speed settings. There was a standard at 60mm a second, there was one at 90mm, and there was one at 135mm a second, so that's for that super fast printing. Well, there is a completed test print, and I have to say it's come out very nicely. So that was done at, actually it was 0.16mm layer height, but I did run it standard at 90mm a second, and then ultimately I upped it to 150% speed, so it was running at about 135mm a second, so it was going pretty blimmin' fast. While I was printing this piece, I also did a couple of tests, which was the filament jam sensor test by deliberately cutting the filament, and indeed the machine stopped and let me carry on again once I'd reloaded the filament. And of course I also did the power failure test. Again, as soon as I powered the machine back up, the screen came up and I could resume the print, which is a really nice feature. So how do I feel about this printer? Well, it's really well made. It has an air of quality about it that you don't usually get at this price, and without all the extras such as the auto leveler and the laser and the bicolor printer kit, I think it's about $250, which is, like I say, very good for the money. Really simple to assemble. It was just 4 bolts to put it together, which again is quite unusual. Now I'm not sure that you entirely need the auto leveling kit. It's quite useful, I guess. But to be honest, once you've manually leveled these printers, they pretty much stay that way unless you move them around a lot. Bicolor printing kit, I haven't tried it yet. I don't know whether I would actually use it myself, but it could be quite good fun. And as for the laser module, you know, it's quite interesting. The thing with that, I think, is that the software definitely needs work. As the standard printer, on its own, it's a really good 3D printer. Of course, I need to still put it through its paces, so I need to print some bigger parts and try some different settings and what have you. But otherwise, I'm generally very pleased with it. I'll leave information and links in the description below as to where you can buy the printer, and of course to Lotmax's website where you can download software, firmware, etc. All that's left to do now is print the larger version of this fertility idol, and that'll really put the machine through its paces. If I find any issues during that print time, I shall leave the comments in the description below. Don't forget to check out my other videos, such as these giant Lego builds behind me. Like, share, subscribe. Bye. printed at 90mm a second. So it actually only took about 13 hours, which is very impressive.